comedian David Boyle, and I'm quitting alcohol. So at about 2 a.m. last night, I was just getting ready to go to bed. I was on my final couple of scrolls, and up pops an article in my feed. Breaking news: Australian cricketer Shane Warne dead at 52 of a heart attack. And I'm like, no fucking way, not Warnie. Warnie. So I do a quick search and it's out there. Shane Warne, the greatest cricketer to ever play the game, dead at 52. And you don't really know what deaths are going to affect you, but this one fucking hit hard. I didn't get a wink of sleep last night. I was just watching fucking old footage of Warnie bowling, all his interviews, ex-players talking about him. It's fucking surreal. Shane Warne dead. Australians know what that means. It's going to be hard to explain to people from other countries, especially countries that don't play cricket. It's going to be very hard to explain what Shane Warne meant to Australia. He was everybody's hero. Every kid that grew up in the 90s and the 2000s, they only had one hero, and that was Shane Warne. There was no one else. He was the king of Australia. Bigger than like Tom Brady or Ronaldo or fucking Messi or fucking Conor McGregor or Khabib or anything like that. For us, because he didn't play for a team. He played for Australia. He was the greatest player in the greatest cricket team of all time. It's hard to explain how beloved fucking Shane Warne was in Australia. Like if you go to any male or even female possibly, but any dude from the ages, let's say 25 to 45 or 50, and say do an impersonation of Shane Warne's bowling action, they'll be able to do it. Bang on. An exact replica of it, because that's all we used to pretend to be, was Shane Warne. Playing cricket in the backyard, in the street. We would all just pretend we were Warnie. We couldn't spin it at all. You couldn't get the tennis ball to fucking rip at all, but we were still fucking bowling Warnie. Even I did, and I hated the Australian cricket team. I didn't even like Shane Warne up until 2005. Not because I hated him or anything. It was because he was too fucking good. I always went for the underdog New Zealand cricket team in the West Indies and shit, and Shane Warne would just fucking annihilate us. Like that Australian cricket team of the 90s and early 2000s was so fucking dominant that they made cricket boring. Like they just annihilated teams for like 12 years. Just destroyed them. Like would beat them so bad that when it came around to the next time Australia played them, like India, England, New Zealand, South Africa, fucking Pakistan, everyone, they would be beaten before a fucking ball was bowled. So in 2005, this is when I really started to love Shane Warne. So the Australian cricket team, they were becoming a little bit vulnerable. They still had all the legends playing. Shane Warne was still playing, but they weren't utterly invincible. And we were playing England, in England for the Ashes series. That's the name of the fucking series we have between England and Australia. It's called the Ashes. They burnt the bails or the wickets that were used in the first test between Australia and England. And that's what they play for every time Australia plays England. Anyway, in 2005, England had a really good young team. And Australia had come off a couple of losses against Bangladesh in the one-dayers. So they were looking a little bit fucking shaky at the time. Anyway, the test series comes around. It's 5 tests in England. 5 5-day tests. So the first test basically goes like every other test between Australia and England for the previous fucking decade. Australia fucking dominate. Glenn McGrath, who was also Shane Warne's fucking sidekick, basically, they were the reason Australia was so dominant. Glenn McGrath and Shane Warne. I don't give a fuck about the batsmen. The batsmen had an easy job. It's pretty easy to go out there and bat when you know you've got Shane Warne and Glenn McGrath that will bowl out the opposition team for under whatever you guys make. If Australia made 120, Shane Warne and fucking Glenn McGrath would bowl them out for 90. So anyway, the first test comes around. Australia dominate it. Glenn McGrath bowls probably the greatest spell of bowling I've ever seen in my entire life. I was sitting there at the pub watching it, just mesmerized. It was amazing. Shane Warne bowls good as well. So in between the first and second test, Glenn McGrath, who's another fucking hero, he has a training accident, steps on a fucking cricket ball, rolls his ankle, and he's out for the rest of the series. It's like Jordan losing Scottie Pippen. Shane Warne's Jordan, Glenn McGrath's Scottie Pippen. Like, there's no Jordan without Pippen and vice versa. So Australia's down their best fast bowler and arguably their best bowler. And now the pressure's on. England gets sent into bat first day of the second test, and they score a bunch of runs. Shane Warne keeps Australia in the game. He's bowling fucking unbelievably. Not only that, he's scoring runs too. He's doing everything. He's taking wickets. He's scoring runs. He's just fucking magic. Anyway, it gets down to like the second last ball or whatever the fuck it was. 2 runs to get, and Australia gets bowled out. Australia lose the second test. By the way, this is the greatest test series in the history of cricket. So it's 1-1 Australia-England, and Australia's starting to look real fucking shaky now. So go into the third test, and this is where greatness reveals itself and the weak crumble. And all you need to know about the Australian team is they had one great player, and that was Shane Warne. All the batsmen crumbled, besides Ricky Ponting, who scored 150 to keep Australia in it, but that was after some crazy bowling by Shane Warne. And I think he scored 90 runs the innings before, after all the Australian batsmen fucking crumbled. Not only is Shane Warne taking all the wickets, he's scoring 90 runs to keep Australia in the game. The rest of the Australian team, who everyone was raving about as legends as well, crumbled at the first sign of real, genuine fucking pressure. For the first time in a decade, they crumbled, and there was one person standing up strong, and that was a blonde bogan named Shane Warne, who was chugging back darts in the dressing room. So if I remember correctly, that test was drawn, so it's still 1-1 going into the fourth test. And now it's basically England versus Shane Warne, and it's fucking tight. The rest of the Australian cricket team crumbled. They did. They fucking crumbled. And Shane Warne put the whole fucking team on his shoulders and just did everything. He took catches. He took all the wickets. He scored more runs than most of the batsmen. And he was just dragging the Australian cricket team to the finish line with basically no support at all. By the legends of the Australian cricket team, no support. It was just Shane Warne. Australia lose that test, so now they're down 2-1 to England. They haven't lost an Ashes series in over a decade. I think 20 years maybe. I can't remember, but it was a long time. So go into the last test, and Shane Warne just does everything humanly possible to get Australia over the line. This is how good Shane Warne played. The English cheer squad is called the Barmy Army. They're the ones in the crowd who sing the songs about a player's wife and shit. They just fucking shit on the players and that. They're very fucking funny. Anyway, they hate the Australian cricket team. They fucking hate all of them. But Shane Warne played so fucking well in that 2005 series that the Barmy Army, on the last day of Shane Warne bowling, were singing "We Wish You Were English." That's how fucking great Shane Warne was. The English in England were singing about Shane Warne, "We wish you were English, we wish you were English," and that's all you need to know. That's all you need to know about Shane Warne, the greatest cricketer I've ever seen play. The greatest, the king. Australia go on to lose the series. They lost the Ashes for the first time in however long, but Shane Warne became a legend in 2005. It's funny how that happens sometimes. In a losing side, he was so far and away better than every other fucking player that you were just in awe of him. He took 40 wickets. The second best bowler took 24. I think he ended up being Australia's second or third highest run scorer as well. It was the best individual cricketing performance I've ever seen, and possibly the greatest individual sporting performance ever. It was just fucking magic. and he transcended the sport. Like, my wife's parents in India at the moment are upset that fucking Shane Warne passed away. Like, he meant a lot to people all around the world, but he meant the most to Australians because he was just one of us, and he made all of us feel like we could be invincible too, just like him. So it kind of feels like a little bit of your fucking childhood getting ripped away, but rest in peace, Shane Warne, the greatest cricketer to ever live. That'll do for tonight. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll see ya the fuck later.